So, these two have gone and gotten themselves stranded on the surface of Minimus. Now, I sent this lander to Minimus to kind of find a suitable landing place for a colony. So, luckily enough for them, they don't actually have to come back. The only reason they're stranded, it's not because I forgot enough fuel. It wasn't like anything like that. It's the way I did the parachutes on top of the lander. They're a bit wonky because instead of using radial mounts, I used what are they called? Attachment points, and I put usually the conical mounted parachutes because I just wanted it to be a bit unique, but it didn't go well. They when re-entering the atmosphere of Kerbal, I think you can understand what happened. But anyways, now that we're here in the lovely vehicle assembly building, I decided that I would send a moving base to go get them on the surface of Minimus, because before establishing a colony, I always find it's nice to have some form of transportation. Now, I will admit, for the actual driver's seat of the rover, or moving base, whatever you want to call it, anyway, I used a technique that I picked up from this one very, I don't know if you call him very large, but pretty large Kerbal Space Program YouTuber, Matt Lown. If you haven't watched any of his content, I'd recommend it. It's great stuff. But anyways, where I took the Mark 1 plane cockpit and I moved it back into a Mark 2 command pod. Just looks nicer than a cupola module, if you ask me. I think that it looks a lot nicer. So anyways, the construction phase wasn't that complicated. It was mostly just large crew capacity, drills, ore tanks, convertitron, etc. We don't really need a convertitron because there's no liquid fuel involved in the actual rover, but you run out of monopropellant and you get flipped upside down. What are you gonna do? So anyways, yeah, I just thought it'd be nice to have. And, satellite dish, solar panels, the basics. As well as ore tanks, crew compartments, you get the picture. I was going to use the service bay as a place to put the drills, but I realized that they didn't really fit, so I decided against it and would just radial mount them later. Anyways, though, around this point in construction that you're seeing here, bit of disaster struck. I meant to remove the RCS fuel tanks from the 4 little segments in the middle of the rover, but instead I accidentally deleted the entire back half, which was a problem, understandably. So, I had to rebuild it from there. That's when I started radial mounting the drills, etc. Satellite dish, I decided it would be better, instead of having that giant girder at the back, to just put it on there and angle it, which in the final product, I will admit, looks a lot nicer. And, I thought at this point it was pretty much ready for launch, so I strapped it onto the thrusters and the rocket, and, yeah, so here we are on the launch pad, as you can see. Typical, lightweight rocket. Not really lightweight, but, it got us there, alright? But anyways, so here we are at launch, typical launch. Got us to orbit, that's, an important part. Anyways, I guess now that we're just, rocketeering, as you could call it, I guess, we could actually talk about the purpose of this craft. So, even though this is a sandbox playthrough, not like a career or scientific playthrough, I always like to have, a tidbit of realism with the craft. So, on board this craft, there's 2 mobile processing labs, again, mostly used for crew capacity, but nevertheless, can still do experiments on the surface, etc. And once docked with the actual colony we'll be sending to Minimus sometime in the near future, we'll actually provide, a science lab that is not restrained to wherever the colony lands. Now, the reason I always send a moving part of the colony, or just a moving base in general first, or a rover, is that I always like to have something you can dock onto the actual colony when it lands, instead of having to fine-tune things. So you have to dock everything together on the surface, or when you're in orbit or whatever. I'm just not a fan of that. Now, my method to getting to Minimus is a little unorthodox, where I don't actually tilt my orbit to the same as Minimus and then play around with the maneuver node until I can get it, get an encounter. I usually just get in an orbit around Kerbal, and then at one of the points where Minimus's orbit is, it's hard to describe. It's pretty much not polar. It's like it's at the same area as where you would go for a moon encounter. You just watch the video, you'll understand. And then I just expand my orbit and keep, adding orbits to the maneuver node until I finally get that one bit. Now, I'm gonna cut out a part here where I was actually getting the orbit correct. It's just a long process. But anyways, we got there and got to low Minimus orbit. While in, LMO, low Minimus orbit, I orbited until I found the lander and its occupants standing out on the surface of the green marble that circles the blue and green. I don't know where I was going with that analogy, but anyways, yeah, so we just found where they were, and there we go. We have a Minimus orbit. I'm saying that a lot. I really should stop before it gets repetitive, but will I? Probably not. And onwards to finding the rover, first of all, or not the rover, the lander, and then landing close enough near it to where it wouldn't be literal hours to drive there. We landed near them, but I felt we could get closer. Didn't really matter all that much, though. I thought, we'll just drive. So anyways, here is the rover sitting beautifully on the surface of Minimus. So I started to drive over to where the lander was, but I started going really fast because I used docking mode and the RCS thrusters to kind of give myself a boost, if you will, and I flipped the rover. So I thought to myself, well, I guess now would be a good opportunity to land the rover a bit closer. This is important stuff right here, kids. This is why you quick save when attempting a landing, because if I hadn't quick saved, I would have had to redone that entire mission. But anyways, touched down a bit hard there. Nothing too severe though. Only the landing engine broke. So decoupled the actual moving base, and voila, we ran over to the stranded Kerbals, picked them up, etc. And I think that's gonna wrap up today's video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, etc. Check out my main channel. Annotation will be on the screen in a few. And thanks for watching. So long.